Hello and welcome back to Dylan's DCC. Today in the helpful tips and tricks segment, we will be looking at the DigiKey series resistor calculator for LEDs. This is a online tool that I use to help me choose resistors to get close to the current that I want while still staying within the standard resistor values. Now, I almost exclusively order 5% tolerance resistors, which will have a gold band at the end. And I will show that here in a minute with another tab when I get to that segment or that part of the segment here. And let's actually just go and look at the standard resistor values right now. Their preferred values or E series. Um, these come in an array of different tolerances. E6 starts at 20%, E12's at 10%. That's your silver band, which is the second most common one that I use. And then E24, which is the gold band, at 5%. I don't get the more expensive 1% resistors. I only get the 5%. So if we continue to scroll down here, we look at our E24 series, it has these values: 10, 18, 33, 56, 11, 20, 36. I guess I should have been going across. I wasn't really paying attention. Sorry about that. So it's 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 27, 30, 33, 36, 39, 43, 47, 51, 56, 62, 68, 75, 82, and 91. Now, how this works is that these are not the only values that are available. You can multiply those values by any 10, um, any exponent of 10, rather. So you can multiply them by 10, you can multiply them by 100, you can multiply them by 1,000, and so on and so forth. So, for example, the most common resistor lowest end value that we would use in HO scale model routing is 470. That is going to be 10 times this 47. I personally prefer a lower current. So I use 680, which is 10 times the 68, or 820, which is 10 times the 82. Frequently, I am dealing with the ESU Loc-Sound decoders. And the ESU Loc-Sound Direct, which is a board decoder designed for direct replacement of factory boards in like Athearn, Kato, etc., has on board 2.2K or 2200, which is of course 100 times 22. They're still using those standard values. That 2.2K does produce a pretty dim, in my opinion, LED. It's still definitely visible, but you can't really see down the track if you're operating in actual darkness like I do sometimes, where I turn the lights extremely low and operate in not total darkness, but like what would be equivalent to um, a quarter moon. So it's fairly dim light, and I actually use the lights on my locomotives to see the trackside signs and whatnot, so I know when to blow my horn, so on and so forth. So that is why I go for the 680 or 820. So, how I figure this out. Supply voltage. My DCC system is set to 15 volts. This is very, very common for HO scale. The forward voltage of the LEDs that I use is 3 or a little bit over, and that's actually this nice chart right here with the different colors of LEDs and their forward voltage ranges is pretty accurate. It says for white, 3 to 3.4. Mine usually are closer to 3 than to 3.4, but it depends on the brand that I buy, the source, If I'm buying cheap Chinese ones off of eBay, for example, in sizes that I can't get elsewhere, um, they might have a little bit more of a voltage variance. And then you can also see that it is very important to be aware of this forward voltage, because let's plug in some values here. Let's go white at 3 volts, and I want to operate at the maximum recommended current for the vast majority of our hobby LEDs, which is 25 milliamps. So I plug in 25. If I hit tab now, it tells me 480, which 470 is the closest to that. If I actually play with these values a little bit, if I go to 24, that goes to 500. If I go back to 25 and add a 0.5, that comes down to 470.5. So we know it's pretty close to that recommended 25, well within a tolerance. I like to run, as I was saying, at a lower current, around 18. Well, okay, that's not exactly. If we flip back over here to the chart and look at our chart again, we remember that 68 is one of our standard values, so 10 times that is 680. This isn't exactly 680, but if I start raising that, like 18.5, no, not quite there. Oops, I went the wrong direction actually. So 17.5, sorry. That gets us even closer. Now if I do 17.6, that's almost right on. So it ends up being like 17.56, I think. No, 17.5, other direction. 17.65. That's almost right on. 17.64. There we go. And I just play with the numbers. This is literally what I do. I just play with the numbers. But now if we go back to our 25 milliamps and we switch it to the low end of the red, if I'm putting in a rear marker light, for example, that displays red, 1.8 is our forward voltage then. Now we need a 528 ohm resistor just to get down to that 25 milliamps. If we go up to 35, nope, too high. 30, we're just hunting around a little bit. We find that, about 27.5, 7.4 maybe. Nope, other way. 0.6, 0.65, nope, 0.7, 8, 9. 28 was too much, wasn't it? Nope, I went the wrong direction. I do that sometimes. So we need to do 28 point something. 28.5 is too much. 28.3, still too much. 0.2, still too much. 0.1, and you're almost right on. It ends up being like 0.08 or something. Oops, accidentally got an extra decimal point in there. Yeah, so 28.08. Now that's still not likely to burn your LED out. There are a lot of commercial LED appliances where they're overdriving the LED at 50 milliamps, and it still lasts for a few years. But I don't want my LEDs to last for just a few years. I want them to go the rest of my life. I don't ever want to have to go into my locomotives again and change them. So if we start playing with these values some more, and I go to 22 milliamps, ooh, I'm getting pretty close to my 680 there, aren't I? So down to 21 milliamps. Cool. Let's go to 19. All right. So we know 20 is probably going to be pretty close. It is, but it's still too much, too high. So it is going to be 19 point something. Try 19.5. That's really close. 19.4. And I'm basically right on. That's my 680 milliamps. So I know I'm still reducing the current by using a 680 ohm resistor. And it's another reason that it's what I do, is that I use these higher values, but without going too much higher. Still, I'll repeat myself. Even if you use that 470 ohm resistor, which are very common, very easy to find, very cheap, it's not likely to burn your LED up. You're pretty safe with that value at the 15-volt supply voltage for any color of LED. All right, so that's how you use this calculator. Now there's a second tool. This is from DigiKey, by the way, and I will include these links in the description down below. There's a second tool from DigiKey, which is the resistor color code calculator based on the bands. I have it set to 4-band, and I've already set it to the 470 ohm, which is yellow, violet, I call it purple, but you know, violet is a shade of purple, right? Brown. So yellow, violet, brown, and then gold because I do the 5% tolerance resistors. And it tells me right here that that's 470 ohms. So if we go blue and then gray, there's my 680 ohm resistor. And it's nice because when you're picking these colors, it actually does have the number along the side as well. But if you don't know what they are, if you've got a resistor and you don't know how to read the color bands, there we go. There's my other common one: gray, red, brown, 820 ohms. If you don't know how to read the color bands, which I don't have it memorized, I really should. I deal with them enough that I really, really should, but I don't. You can just grab a resistor, put the colors into this calculator, and boom, it'll tell you the value. And it'll tell you even if you're doing one of these other tolerances. All right, now, nice thing is it also has 5 and 6 band options. Now, 5 and 6 band resistors are not as common, and they are typically a little more on the expensive side. But you can see that these values still apply. You just get another multiplier. All it does is move it out. So now we're dealing in hundreds instead of tens. So if we go to gray, red, black, black, the third line now being another digit, another place. So rather than having 82, we're at 820 already. And now we've added another band to be our multiplier, because previously our third band was our multiplier. So we can multiply that by 10, and we jump straight up to 8,200. So higher bands you might find more commonly in high value resistors, so that they can be more explicit, especially if you're going very low tolerances, like if you go down to the gray, which is 0.05 of a percent of tolerance. And then we were to do something like orange, red, green, and then violet, say 3.25 giga ohms. Yeah, giga ohms. That's a very high value resistor. You're not going to find that unless you're doing something extremely crazy and specialty. The vast majority of you are never going to choose anything but a 4-band resistor on here. Still, I wanted to show you the tool and how it operates. Now, there is one more thing I can show you. I have to pause the recording for just a moment and get that set up. All right, welcome back from the quick pause there. I brought up Amazon, and I've searched for 470 ohm resistor. Now, I get a bunch of results here. I'm not going to tell you which ones I buy because it varies depending on prices and whatnot. What you are looking for, though, is this half watt, and that your value is actually what it says it is. The other thing that I look for is I always get these ceramic coated resistors. I do not get the metal film, which is these blue ones up here. The metal film resistors, the color codes are extremely difficult to read sometimes. The blues and the violet, for example, look the same to me. on the metal film resistors. Now, maybe you're younger than I am and have better eyesight than I currently do, and can read them, but why make it difficult? Just get the ceramic, and the price difference is negligible. I mean, what is that, 17 cents? Of course, it's assuming the quantities are the same. Um, Also, this one happens to be a 1% tolerance, which isn't necessary. But I also tend to buy them in bandoliers of 1,000 at a time because I use so many. You may not need that many, but just be aware that that is an option. Maybe you only need this pack of 100. That's entirely up to you. If this suits your needs, by all means. Now, that does bring up a point here, though. Why would I buy a pack of 10 for $6.16 when I can get a pack of 100 of the exact same resistor for 600 or for $6.90? Simple math right there, right? Which is another reason that I typically order in packages of 1,000. In fact, if we go here and then go to that seller's store, we should be able to browse around. They've got a lot of different values and different size packages. So you should be able to find what you'd like, depending on what your needs are. I know that this particular vendor I have purchased my 680 from in the past. Um, right there, 680. Although, like I was saying, I do buy the larger quantity than 25. I definitely almost always buy the 1,000 packs, which I'm not seeing listed here right now from this vendor, which is another reason why I don't have any particular vendor loyalty when I'm looking for these. If you've got what I want and or need at a reasonable price in the quantity pack that I need it, I'm buying from you. It's that simple. So there you have it. That should answer all of your questions on how to choose a resistor for your LED in your model railroad locomotive. Just make sure that you know what your supply voltage is. If you're on DC, make sure you go by your maximum supply voltage. But if you're on DC, I would also recommend sticking towards the lower end resistor, the higher current, because then when you are running at a lower voltage to be running slower, your LED will still light. So if you are one of those DC holdouts and you are using LEDs, which is a little bit more complicated because you do need a bridge rectifier, uh, probably a voltage regulator, at least I would use one, and a capacitor in the order of rectifier, then capacitor across the output of the rectifier for smoothing, and then your resistor after that. Or actually your voltage. So, I'm sorry, let me start that over. My headset flaked out on me for a moment there. Uh, your Bring your voltage incoming, and then you have a bridge rectifier or at least a diode if you're using directional lighting. Uh, that's a little bit more complicated of a circuit than we have with DCC. So bridge rectifier or single diode or single pair of diodes in opposing polarities for each leg, then a voltage regulator. No, I'm sorry, then a capacitor for smoothing, then a voltage regulator, and then your resistor to bring the voltage down to the final voltage and current down to the final trimming. If you are going to use a voltage regulator, my recommendation is to get a 5-volt regulator and then bring it down to the 3 volts or whatever, um, using a resistor. And in that case, if we go back here to our calculator, we would be using 5 volts here and 3 volts here. And if we want to run it 20 milliamps, it's a 100 ohm resistor. So that's how I would calculate that. Anyways, that is all for today. Thank you all for joining me on this quick episode of Tips and Tricks, and I will see you on the next one.